preliminary issues. The Honorable Supreme Court in Subhash Desai Supra versus the Governor of Maharashtra, hereinafter referred to as Subhash Desai, was pleased to direct that the Speaker should prima facie determine who the real political party is for the purpose of adjudicating disqualification petitions if two or more factions claim to be that political party, and accordingly shall recognize the whip and the leader who were duly authorized by the Shiv Sena political party, keeping with the principles discussed in the said judgment. Hence, keeping in view the factual matrix and the directions of the Honorable Supreme Court, I will prima facie determine who the political party is for the purpose of adjudicating disqualification petitions if two or more factions claim to be that political party, and accordingly recognize the whip and the leader who are duly authorized by Shiv Sena political party. Keeping in mind principles discussed in Subhash Desai Supra, it is necessary to consider and determine the said preliminary issue before examining the merits and deciding whether respondents have incurred disqualification under the 10th schedule of the Constitution of India. Thus, the preliminary issue that arises for my consideration before delving into the merits of disqualification petitions under the 10th schedule is, which among the two fractions was the real Shiv Sena political party, and consequently, who was the duly authorized leader and or the whip of Shiv Sena political party for the purpose of deciding the present disqualification petition. The other issue framed for my consideration in this group of disqualification petition is whether the respondents have incurred disqualification in terms of paragraph 21A of the 10th schedule of the Constitution of India on account of their alleged acts and conduct. Paragraph 84 deals with the principles which have been laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court. I am not going to read out those. Those are a part of my order. I'll come to paragraph number 85 now. Thus, what emerges from the principles laid down by the Honorable Apex Court in that the question of who the real political party is has to be considered and determined after giving due weightage to 1. The Constitution of Shiv Sena, 2. The leadership structure of the party, and 3. The legislative majority if two or more factions claim to be real political party. The question of who the real political party is hereinafter referred to as the preliminary issue. Since in these proceedings both in the previous paragraphs, I have recorded the submissions made by both the parties. I will come down to my observations and conclusions with regards to the preliminary issues. As stated earlier, the decision of the preliminary issue has to be taken after careful analysis of the Constitution of Shiv Sena, the leadership structure of the party, and the legislative party majority. After having heard both sides on the above aspect, I now propose to proceed to record my observations and finding on the preliminary issue. As is evident from the submissions of the parties, there is no consensus on the Constitution submitted to the Election Commission of India with consent of both the factions. Likewise, the parties have different point of view on the leadership structure, which has to be taken into consideration. The only aspect which is undisputed is the majority in the legislature party. Hence, to embark upon the finding on the preliminary issue, I will have to decide the relevant constitution which has to be taken into account, 2. The leadership structure which existed before the dispute arose. Further, it will also have to be determined as to when the rival factions emerged.